You'll need to choose an area that's firm and level and yet allows drainage away from the site. Don't forget to leave about 18 inches clear space around the shed so that assembly and maintenance is easy. Your garden shed must have a solid, damp-proof base. I chose concrete pavers because my wife hasn't decided yet about landscaping the garden area. And because the frame is so strong, I'll be able to move the garden shed later and put it on a concrete slab. To prevent dampness entering the foundation, it's best to place a heavy-duty polythene sheet under all the pavers or the whole slab. As it says in the manual, the first step is to unpack, identify, and sort all the parts and hardware. Then assemble all the tools and a ladder that you will need to put your shed together. Now, since the shed is bigger than the 6-foot by 5-foot model, I'll need to join the rails together before I start. First, the front base rail. After checking the model number on the box the shed came in and looking in the manual, I found that the total length of the front base rail for my shed is 2.305 metres. So I overlap the two pieces until I have the right length, and the holes line up nicely. The entry and exit ramps go on now too, and are joined using the self-tapping screws. One thing about self-tapping screws, I think it makes sense to use an electric or battery screwdriver with a magnetic bit in it. Saves you a lot of time. Then I do the same thing for the rear base rail, both side base rails, and side top rails, checking each time that I get the right length for each part from the manual. The mid-wall braces and the front and rear top rails are even easier. Just put the two pieces end to end and join them with this bracket. While we are assembling the front and rear top rails, it's a good time to put the gables on as well. With these small brackets on the front top rail only. The last pieces we need to join are the roof beams. There are two long and two short ones. You lay a long and a short piece end to end, then lay the other two pieces on top to double the thickness. Then bolt them all together using the nuts and bolts. All the parts are now ready. I began assembling my shed by setting up the base rails. I positioned the rear base rail and side base rail with corner gussets and fastened them with self-tapping screws. The front base rail doesn't require corner gussets. Just crimp it in and it's secured to the side rails at the shed corners with self-tapping screws using the pre-punched holes. And then I attached the Zs. Now for the corner panels. Use both hands to bend the four corner panels to a full 90 degrees. That looks right. Here, as you can see, I'm going to screw the front corner panels to the Zs and the side rails. Notice how I've attached the short side of the panels to the side rails. And now the rear corner panels to the rear and side rails. Again, short side to the side rails. Now it's onto the door glides. You hold the door track so that the open edge faces down. Place the stem of the wheel into the door glide and slide the two pieces into the door track with the wheel facing the back. There are 4 glides in total. You put 2 in from each end. Now fasten the door track to the top of the front corner. Now we fasten the rear top rail to the top of the corner panels and attach the side top rails to the top of the corner panels. Before you fasten them, make sure the side top rails actually sit on top of the front and rear top rails. Now everything's starting to take shape. Now we do the rear mid-wall brace between the back corners for added strength and stability. Now for the remaining mid-wall braces. You fasten the side ones between the front and rear corners with gussets. Then secure the front mid-wall braces on either side of the doorway. Now the door jambs. Screw the door jambs, one each side of the entry ramp, to the door track at the top, the mid-wall brace, and to the Zs at the bottom. What's my next job? Ah, the wall panels. I can screw them to the top rails, the mid-wall braces, and the base rails. To start the roof assembly, I first fix the roof beam. You position it on the vertical gable flanges and fasten it loosely with nuts and bolts. I'll tighten them later. The larger model sheds have extra roof beams to make the bigger roof super strong. Well, that completed the roof beam. I just positioned it and checked that it's all nice and square. So now it's onto the roof. I position the roof end panels over the gables section and line up the holes to fasten them with bolts and nuts. Then they're attached to the roof beams and the side top rail, using plastic washers to keep out the weather. And this is the time to tighten the nuts on the gables. Now for the roof panels and ridge cover panels. I positioned the roof panels, one on each side, and then progressively installed the required ridge cover panels. Then I attached the lengths of roof edge trims over the edge of the roof panels. I'm getting close to finishing the job now, only the doors and fascias to go. Notice that the door panels are identical. It's only the assembly that makes them left and right-handed. Now for the top door braces, fasten through the mid-holes only. Then fasten the door braces and the plastic door spacers, 2 for each panel, to the bottom of each door panel. Then you position the bottom of the door in the channel and attach the top to the 2 door glides. And you repeat this for the other door. Now fasten the door handles to the door panels with nuts and bolts. Before you go any further, slide the doors closed to see that they meet squarely. Now you insert the narrow top flange of the door fascia between the door track and the gables. Press firmly until the flange is forced in and fasten it to the door track with self-tapping screws. I'll give it a final check for squareness. I found the easiest way to ensure that the base frame is square is by checking that the diagonals are equal. Ah, that looks pretty good. Now we can look at anchoring the shed. Having carefully positioned the shed on its base, we use a 6.5mm carbide bit to drill into the foundation, which fits comfortably with a 6.5mm Dynabolt. And don't forget to use flush-fitting bolts on the door base rail. I always feel it's a good idea to use a silicone sealant under the base rails as it keeps rainwater from draining into the shed. We're getting near completion now, so it's time to check all the screws, nuts and bolts are tight. Well, that looks nearly it. The last job is to put on the lock and lock up my new Treco garden shed so that it becomes childproof. If you follow the instructions in the manual, as I did, no problems. Neil said it was so simple and looked so good, he's bought one for himself.